Hello, 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 and welcome to The Difference Makers. I'm your host, Jacqueline Grant, and we are here on The Difference Makers. We're live here on LinkedIn, we're live on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube. Today, we have a very special guest. As always, someone who's going to inspire, to edify, and to give you just a view of their journey to where they are now and how you can do the same in your career by being inspired by those who are already creating a path of success. Again, this is the difference makers. If you know a difference maker that needs to be exposed to the world, no longer a best kept secret, share them with me because I'd love to showcase them here on The Difference Makers. Our audience is made up of entrepreneurs, but also those who may be corporate workers, 9-to-5 workers who are looking to transition into entrepreneurship. This is a place to get that education and inspiration here on The Difference Makers with our guest, who actually is an expert in being able to get the job, career, or next step in your career just the way that you would like it to be. I want to share with you our special guest, Dr. Laquita Stribling. Let me do a great introduction for her. Over the last 24 years, Dr. Laquita Stribling worked her way up from entry-level associate to senior vice president of Randstad, USA, the world's largest provider of human resources solutions. Laquita is now responsible for 3 districts and 12 offices, over 1,200 employees, and approximately $50 million in revenue. Laquita also serves on the Executive Diversity Council with Randstad, who was most recently recognized as number 30 on the Diversity Inc.'s Top 100 in 2019. In addition to her impressive career, Dr. Laquita has been extremely active in the Nashville community. Her passion to give to her time, to her community, and giving community service is driven by the scripture, to whom much is given, much is required. So I would like to welcome to our virtual stage, our virtual platform, Dr. Laquita Stribling. Welcome, Laquita. How are you today?
Thank you. Good morning.
Wow. Well, we are looking forward to hearing your journey to how you are now the vice president of Randstad USA. First, I want to just ask the question we ask every guest. What makes you a difference maker? How are you making a difference in the world?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I've been asked that question a number of times, and it really started from my upbringing. So my mom and my dad both had 12 siblings, and the thing I can always remember, especially on my mom's side of the family, is they were very philanthropic people. So not that they had a lot of money to give, but what the time, the talent, the gifts they did have, they so freely shared with other people. And I used to always make fun of my mom as growing up. I said, I think you look for meetings to go to. I think you look for things to do, because she was always so very busy. She could never see a need and not do something to help address that need. And so it's just part of my DNA. And I truly believe that we're all blessed with gifts and talents and passions and ability. And I think, partially for our own self-promotion and advancement, but also for making a positive difference in the world. And that's just who I've been raised to be.
Well, that is one of the main reasons why I asked you to be on our show, and the difference that you're making in the world by helping to acknowledge and promote the gifts, talents, and abilities of individuals, sometimes that they may not even see in themselves, but through your organization and you directly, you help to bring out the best in people. So that makes you a perfect guest for the difference makers. So share with us a little bit of your journey. What was your early career like? How did you come to be on this path of now being a vice president of a major organization?
That question is very timely based on this particular week in particular. So I grew up in a very rural community. very small community. At one time, it was one of the poorest counties in the country. But we were rich in that our teachers were very demanding. The community of adults were very involved in every kid's upbringing. So it didn't matter if your mother or dad saw you. You were in trouble if any adult saw you. And they really pushed us to be excellent because I think they knew there was so much more opportunity outside the city limits of my little small town. And my high school was primarily African American. It was probably 95%. And all K through 12, my teachers were probably 95, 97% African American. Well, I went on to undergrad on an athletic and academic scholarship at an HBCU, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, where I ran track. And so that environment was primarily African American. My teachers, my fellow students, coaches, and all of that. Then I went to graduate school at a primarily white institution at the University of Memphis, where that is the moment I saw how big the world really was outside of, the world I had grown up in, and really felt that, I got the appropriate development and influence for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And so that was different, going from being in a place where everybody in the classroom looked just like me to being sometimes the only one who looked just like me. And so that experience also prepared me for corporate America, because when I entered corporate America, I found myself to be the only one in a lot of rooms and meetings and such. And so for me, I was not uncomfortable about that, because I had opportunities to really see the world for how big it really was and how big the opportunities really are. And I knew in my upbringing, in the way I was raised, and the examples of, my parents and other adults in my life, I knew hard work works. And so I got in at an entry-level position. I remember the day I was offered the job, and I just got in there, learned all I could. And what I tell young people today is, being average, that's not the difference maker. Average simply means being on the top of the bottom. And so in everything, I would strive to be excellent. And my grandfather used to always say, do a job, big or small, do it well or not at all. And that was really the fuel for how I entered the workforce. And so I started, and after about 1.5 years, I got my first promotion. And I had a boss who I reported to for 23 years, who was just amazing. And I didn't probably necessarily realize that, over the course of the 23 years. Now that I'm older, more mature, I can see it clearly. He was so in tune with me that he understood the rhythm of how I operate. So like, I'll pour myself into something until I get it. And then I'll feel like, okay, I can relax now. We're good, everything. But he also understood when I got to that point, it was important for me to take on something new, something challenging, something different. So about every 1.5 years, every 2 years, he would give me something new and different. So I felt challenged. I felt like I was getting new jobs and new opportunities without having to leave the company. And I give so much thanks to him for his interest in my career, for his involvement, for his advocacy and promotion of me and my ability throughout the company. So it has been an amazing, amazing journey. I want to give a shout out to Tony Rattler, because I love him. I miss him as my boss, but I have to say he has a lot to do with opening doors, making sure I was invited into rooms. I did the work, but he was attentive to what I was doing and made sure I didn't miss any opportunities.
Wow, that's an amazing synopsis of a very lengthy and impactful career. And one of the main points that you made was that you had someone who was a champion for you, a mentor, yes, a supporter. And sometimes we have that Sometimes it's already built into the position as far as a career track, but then sometimes it's not. What would you say to someone who is struggling to have that support, whether it's within a company or even within their family, having that support that you've had on both sides, from your family side as well as in the corporate setting, you had a support system. What would you say to someone who is struggling to find that support, and how can they still be successful by having the right support?
Well, based on my own experience, I've always been a very driven, goal-oriented person. And so, I can remember, and I think probably the defining moment for me was, I remember in sixth grade, as old as I am, so this was, I wanted to play basketball. And the coach told me I was too short. So I'm thinking, he's the adult. He must know. So I said, well, okay. And I went off and ran track, it worked out well for me. I got a full ride, all kinds of records and awards and all of that. But I also thought about, well, what if I had played basketball? Who knows? And so in that moment, I realized in life, there are going to be dream killers, naysayers, haters, people who, just are not going to be helpful for your journey. So I've always been one who does a lot of self-reflection and self-assessment, and those things that I can see for myself that I needed to work on, I went and found the help, or found the mentor, or found the book, or took the class to help me in that particular area. Because I always felt like if your boss comes to you and tell you this is a problem, then it's a problem. But we all have blinders, so that sometimes there are things that we don't see about ourselves. But those things that I could see about myself, I didn't wait for somebody to come help me with that. I went and took a much more proactive approach to find the help I needed for myself. I think it's important for everybody, no matter where you are in life, to find you a mentor. Now, mentor doesn't mean somebody's going to always be, amen and whatever it is you're saying and what you're wanting to do. A good mentor listens more than they talk, but they also will give you the advice even when it's hard to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we don't have those types of people in our lives, because I think we can get very comfortable with being comfortable. And I always say we have to always find a way to get comfortable with the discomfort of being uncomfortable, because in that discomfort, in that pressure, it's where you find your growth. It's where you find your strength, and it's where you really find who you are. And so that's how, I think it starts with self and setting the goals and determining, okay, what's the gap between where I am right now and where I'm trying to go? And what are the things I can do to help close the gap? And who do I know, or who can I reach out to that may be helpful in closing that gap for me too?
Well, you said something that struck me, that reminded me of something that my bishop says. And he says, don't let blind people proofread your vision. Don't let blind people proofread your vision, because if you have a burning desire for something that you should do, you look for support to help that to grow and to flourish. And granted, there may be people who may try to protect you and dissuade you from your goal. But if you know that it's something that you truly should be doing, look for those who are going to support that, because not everyone is going to see the vision that you see for yourself. So I agree with you 100% on that. But
that's right.
What I would like to ask you to shift gears just a bit now and tell us a little bit more about Randstad and maybe some key goals or initiatives that the organization is looking to move forward with as we now take the turn with the pandemic and we're coming out of this year plus long situation, and how it has impacted the marketplace. What changes are you seeing, and what needs are you seeing that need to be filled that maybe someone in our audience can maybe partake in?
So Randstad is a global organization that started in the Netherlands and came to the United States in 1994. with 2 acquisitions, one in Tennessee and one in Georgia. And since that time, we've made a number of acquisitions. So we are in 30-something states, and we have several different product lines. So we do manufacturing and logistics, we do office and professional, we do IT, we do engineering, we do bioscience, and finance and accounting. So depending on your market, we may offer some different things, but we are the largest staffing company in the world. And, for us, I think we strive to be different in that we strive to have consultative relationships with our clients. And sometimes that means not telling the client what they want to hear and not doing things the way the client thinks they ought to be done. And so we've had some really long-standing relationships with clients that depend on us very heavily for their recruiting and staffing and sometimes even retention needs. And so the biggest thing, I'll tell you, I've been with Randstad for 25 years now. And this last year has been the most challenging year ever. Of course, we have been in the middle of a pandemic. There are lots of people who, took themselves out of the workforce for various different reasons. And I try not to sit in judgment on the reasons why, because there are lots of reasons why. And it made it so challenging where you had customers who had needs, but we struggled to find enough people in the time frame to cover their needs. And I think, that's probably common for most, not only staffing companies, but you see we're hiring signs everywhere. So companies have struggled with this as well. We've seen where pay rates are increasing, and really it has turned to be an employee's market. So for clients who still think they're calling the shots and, that people ought to just be thankful to be able to work for them, they're really struggling right now because it's an employee's market and they have options. So for every person who's looking for a job or looking for a new and different opportunity, a lot of them right now are weighing 5, 6, 7 different options at a time. And so they can be picky. And they can, I think a lot of people are looking more now for, what's in it for me? Does it meet my goals for my career and for my future? Whereas like our grandparents, you just did a job because that's what you had to do to earn money. And so employees are taking much more ownership of their careers, their earning potential, all of that now more so than ever before.
Wow. Well, that is definitely timely information. And one of the things that you mentioned reminded me of something I read most recently that talked about, you talked about the fact that it is an employee's market right now and that your clients, your corporate clients, are not necessarily calling the shots anymore. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they pretty much were, because they said they determined whether you had to come into the office or not. And now I knew this was going to happen, that employees were now going to be able to negotiate those coveted perks of working from home multiple days per week, because they were told this is not a work from home position, or this position cannot be done from home. But obviously now we see that most can. So I saw something recently that talked about if someone gives notice that they are leaving, that companies are trying to get them to stay because they don't want that intellectual property, that intellectual knowledge to walk out of the door. And now they're giving them perks to be able to stay. And people in that position from the employee side are taking offense at that, because if they saw that they were valuable, why didn't they give them those perks up front and not just when they were deciding to leave? So what are your thoughts on that, and how maybe are you coaching your clients, your corporate clients, to handle their very valuable employees in this day and age?
Well, your progressive companies are doing more because they realize that very thing. So they're doing more to have stay conversations, like getting in front of it. And so as they're having great conversations and one-on-ones with their employees, they're asking difficult questions of, what do we have to do to make sure you stay? What types of things would make you leave? And so I think progressive companies are listening attentively a lot more today, because really that makes the difference for any organization. You think about the human capital aspect. You can't have a thriving company without having really good employees at every level. And I think your progressive companies are seeing that, recognizing that, and really putting plans in place to combat that, so that they don't have to deal with losing their valuable talent because they didn't show them enough appreciation. Now, you have some companies that are slow to make that adjustment, and they are the ones that are really struggling right now. Like inside our own company, we have our employee engagement surveys, and I will tell you, we are combing through those. We have special project teams that are, that go and work on those things that rise up as concerns, that we have project teams to go really work on those and talk to small groups to see what's really going on, and then coming back and creating actionable items, because we know as an organization, we can't be successful without having top quality talent. And we know that it's, what's the blues song says, cheaper to keep her. And so we really, as an organization, are doing a lot of things to minimize turnover and burnout. So I think the hybrid model, our own company, there are some jobs we just never thought you could do remotely. Well, we were forced to figure that out. So, I mean, there have been some positive things to come out of having gone through a pandemic. And for us, we always had people who felt like they'd love to work from home a day or two a week, and we thought it couldn't be done. Well, now we can offer that. And we do offer that, even though we are, in a different place with the pandemic. We are still ensuring that people who want to work from home a few days a week are able to do that. So I think companies that have been attentive to what's going on and are progressive and really understand the value of human capital, I think they're making the necessary adjustments. And hopefully enough of us will be doing that the other companies who are slow to get on board with that will take notice and start to make some adjustments also.
Well, you mentioned about project teams and lots of projects going on in your company. Who do you overall work with? I know you mentioned corporate clients. Do you still work directly with individuals looking for employment?
Yes, so we do both sides of the house. So we work with clients who we feel like, based on the types of positions we recruit for, that we would have good pipelines of employees to offer to them. And then we also work on the talent side, is what we call them. So anybody who's looking for a job or something new and different in their careers, they come to us. And so between the client and having the talent, we look for opportunities to bring them together.
Awesome. Well, I'm a project manager. I'm a certified project manager, and I train others in project management. So a lot of my community is in project management. And of course, that spans all business types, all industries. So you mentioned engineering, IT, manufacturing. So there are project managers in all of those. So for my project manager friends out there, if you want to try something new and different, here's an opportunity for you. So Laquita, we're going to ask you how people can get in contact with you before we end this session. But what I'd like to ask you is, when someone is now preparing in this new marketplace to transition, what would be your top tip or two that you would give them to refresh after this unusual time we've been going through? How do you refresh yourself and position yourself for that next career move?
That's a good question. So I think first is so you have to have some idea of what it is you want to do. Because when you work with a recruiter or a headhunter, our job really isn't to try to figure out what you'd be good at. We need you to come to us, because the natural inclination for a recruiter is to look at what you've been doing. And I will say it's probably harder today to do something different than the experience you have. But I'm not saying it's impossible. So if you have been a teacher for 20 years, well, it might be challenging to get an IT job. But you've got to figure out for yourself, okay, where are my interests? What type of work do I want to do? And then you have to go and look at, so what's required in those types of positions? Then you have to do an analysis of yourself to see, how big is the gap? And then knowing that if there's a gap, don't be afraid by that. Go and do the things you need to do to fill those gaps, because there are those people who are very successful at finding something totally new and different than the things they've done before. So it is possible.
And no better time than now to reinvent yourself.
Absolutely. And I will say, you got to look at your resume, because sometimes when people haven't had to look for a job in a really long time, their resumes look dated. And that's not what you want, because a recruiter, when they're going through resumes, they're really looking. I normally have 3 piles. An absolutely not. Yes, I'm interested in this person, and a maybe. So the no's I can get through really quickly. So you want to be careful, because every step of the process is part of the interview. So how you present yourself on your resume is part of the interview. Any interactions you have via phone, virtually, email, text message, they are all part of the interview. So you got to make sure that you are on your game, that you're presenting yourself well. Because here's the key right now. You may be very qualified for the job, but so are hundreds of other people right now. Mm-hmm. And so it is much more competitive than it's ever been. And so the purpose of the resume is to get you an interview. So you don't want to put everything you've ever done on a resume, because guess what? I'm probably not reading beyond 2 pages. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten resumes 6, 7, 8 pages long. So you want to be concise. You want to Google examples of professional resumes, because the appropriate amount of white space is important, the layout, the cosmetic look and flow, all of that is important, because if that doesn't impress the recruiter, then you're probably not going to get the interview. And then when you get the interview, you need to have done your research on the company, because the question I don't like in an interview, so what do you all do? Like, okay, you could have Googled that,
That is my point. Exactly. I don't know how many times I have interviewed people for my own need, and they have not even gone to my website or my LinkedIn page, and they're interviewing for one of my positions. That makes absolute no sense. So please repeat that again for our audience.
Yes. So when you land the interview, do your research, do your homework, have your questions prepared, really review the job description so that you have really good questions. But then that's the time to sell yourself. That's not the time to be bashful. That is the time to show how you are the perfect fit for that particular position.
Well, I have a bonus question for you as we close out. Now, part of what I do as a trainer for project management, Scrum, Agile, Six Sigma, all of those professional certifications, I help my students to actually get raises, promotions, and so forth. So I work a lot with hiring managers and recruiters. I've looked at many resumes. I know how to formulate resumes based on the person's goals, and actually help them with interviewing skills as well. And I have become somewhat of a LinkedIn expert. So I want to ask you, what is the importance these days of LinkedIn? Is it more important, less important? Does it make a difference? I have an opinion, but I'd love to know what yours is.
Well, I really think it depends on what level, well, not necessarily what level you are, but what it is you want to do. Mm-hmm. I think if you're certainly in a professional position, you should be on LinkedIn, and you should have a picture. Because I think it says a lot. If you're a professional, you're on LinkedIn, you got that little bubble thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I think it's important on LinkedIn to be polite. Like, I'm always respond, even if I'm not interested, even if I'm not the right contact for whatever their needs are. I always respond. And it's important as a professional to be active on there. You should post sometimes. You should comment on other people's posts. It's amazing how in a virtual space, how you can get connected and how you can get people to help you with whatever it is you're doing. help grow your business. So I think LinkedIn in this day and time, especially in a professional setting, is very, very, very important.
One recruiter told me years ago, which I still think is appropriate, is they literally said, if you're not on LinkedIn, you don't exist when it comes to looking for let's say a mid to upper level type of position.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so important to keep your LinkedIn professional.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that feedback. I truly appreciate it. So we've gotten so much tremendous information from you, so much juicy nuggets that we can take and run with, looking back in our career, looking forward and planning. For right now, how can people get in contact with you if they'd like to know more, like to find out if there's a position that might align with their experience that maybe Randstad is representing with a company? How can they get in contact with you?
Okay, well, first let me say that I'm based out of Nashville, and so I'm in Tennessee. So if you have questions about jobs in Boston, I might be able to connect you, but I won't know firsthand what's going on in Boston. So let me just put that out there. So of course on LinkedIn is a good way to connect with me, and I don't mind giving my work email. It's laquita.stribling@randstadusa.com.
Okay, we will put that into the chat afterwards, but would you repeat that for us once more?
Sure. It's laquita.stribling@randstadusa.com. And here's what I will say. I always respond. So if you send me a message and I don't respond, it's okay to hit me up again, because either I forgot I saw it and didn't get back to it, or I didn't see it. But I would never not respond at all.
And in closing, would you share with everyone how you came to be on the show? It was through
LinkedIn.
Exactly.
Yes, we met via LinkedIn. And it's been my pleasure getting to meet you and being on your show and seeing all the amazing things that you're doing as well.
And thank you so much. And I encourage all of you to look up Dr. recently honored
Yes.
as Dr.
Yes, 20 days in.
20 days in and counting, where you can look at her LinkedIn profile, see the tremendous accomplishments that she has made over her career. And we didn't go over all of them. There's not enough time to go through all the things that she has done. She is well connected, not just in her local area. See what you can find from her LinkedIn profile to inspire you, to allow you to dream as to what is possible for you, and definitely get in contact with her on LinkedIn. So with that, any closing words that you'd like to share?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you so much for giving this platform to inspire and motivate other people, and to give people the opportunity to share their story. Because a lot of times people only see the afterglow. And so this show gives you an opportunity to really talk about some of those things and challenges that happen behind the scenes. And, I got to believe there's someone listening who can relate. So thank you so much for all that you do to uplift people.
Well, I thank you for all that you do to be a difference maker in the world. So thank you so much, Dr. Laquita Stribling. Thank you so much for being here on The Difference Makers.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Have a good day.
You do the same.
Bye-bye.